Welcome back to Sika Psychology. Today we're going to talk about what to do after you hit a PB. Just kind of follow along the same lines, like what to do when you finish a training cycle, in terms of making sure you get the most bang for your buck out of learning what went wrong, learning what went right, ensuring your kind of reflections and your diaries around the PB are valuable when you go forward with your training cycles. The first thing I'd say is to actually write down what you did, right? So we always talk about the importance of journaling, the importance of training journals, just tracking everything you're doing in training in terms of like the sets, the reps, the weights, the loading, how it made you feel. Everyone kind of understands, I think, at this point that that's very, very important. But when we look at particularly max out sessions or these kind of PRing sessions where we have probably one every 4 months, one every 6 months, one every 12 months, maybe depending on the sport, these sessions are a lot rarer than other sessions. So just taking down a small bit more information, being a small bit more mindful over the lead up, being a small bit more mindful over like how your warm-up attempts felt, that's something that you're not going to remember in 6 months' time when you go to fully max your snatch again, or in a year's time when you go to max out a deadlift again. You know, it's these kind of discrete feelings that you'll have at the time, you'll probably remember them a day or two after. They're going to be really, really valuable when you're peaking for your next meet or peaking for your next, just maxing out at the end of your next training cycle. An example of this would be your second last warm-up and how that felt, right? I could not tell you how my second last warm-up felt 2 weeks ago when I maxed my front squat or whatever. I'm just not going to be able to remember back that far. I can definitely tell you what the last warm-up attempt felt like. I can tell you how hard or how easy 190 was. I can probably tell you what that technique looked like. But if I think back to a powerlifting competition I did 12 months ago or 14 months ago, I'm not going to tell you any of the warm-up attempts. I won't remember it. It would be very valuable if I did remember it, because it would mean when I go to max out my back squat again, I'd have a better idea of like, okay, shit, 90% felt not great, or the opposite side of that, 90% might feel really, really good the last time I maxed out, and then I should feel that first attempt should be very, very easy when I go to do it. So this reflective journal, or just writing down what happened in the session, can be good both psychologically for me going into another competition or going into another max out, and it can be just in terms of like the logistics of how you warm up, what attempts you choose, the percentages of jumps you take each time, whether that be a 10% jump or a 5% jump. All these things can help you out in the future. The second thing then would be to analyze whether the PB you hit or your competition performance was the performance you wanted. We have talked about goal setting now so much, and it's probably at the point where we just need to make a comprehensive review of goal setting. So we might do that soon. But you need to start looking back over your goals and say, okay, is this sprint time, is this squat weight the weight I actually wanted to hit? Is it lining up with the time frame I had in mind? So the next time I go to set a goal, am I effectively setting goals? Am I effectively achieving goals? And it just allows us to be an awful lot more reflective and get an awful lot more out of the goal setting process if I do this kind of retroactive review of those goals. So if you're going into a competition and you hit whatever, it's like you had a qualifying total for national championships, that might be like, you might feel great about it at the time, but if you've been training for the last 12 months to do whatever, like qualifying total for European championships, you can't then reflect and be like, okay, that didn't go well. You know, you have to be a small bit more analytical with yourself and just be like you can always come up with the excuses. There's nothing wrong with that, because a lot of the time there are valid excuses, but do analyze the goal setting process. So far we've talked about analyzing and reflecting on the session itself. The second thing then is analyzing and reflecting on the goal setting, the program, how we looked at the kind of longer term thing. Then the third thing is actually enjoying the PB. The amount of times I've had people come in on a Saturday, and even if it's just in like a weightlifting class and they're maxing out, they'll hit a PB, and then because they kind of did a mini taper to hit the PB, they'll want to come in on Tuesday and hit another PB again. Like, I'm all for people making the most out of like their taper or making the most out of a training cycle, but people tend to draw out these max outs as much as possible. You know, they'll have like test week in inverted commas, but they'll end up testing everything twice or 3 times within the week. You need to, like, if you're going to be a good athlete, you have to be able to bring it on the day. You can't do a second competition on a Tuesday just because the competition on the Saturday didn't go well. And although people might not necessarily be like competitive athletes, they should be trying to emulate the effective strategies that competitive athletes use. So if you're going to do a training cycle, taper off the training cycle, or taper up to a max, or taper up to a PB, you need to just enjoy the PB when you hit it and stop trying to chase more. The other good advantage of this, or a good example of this, would be when Owen hit 151 a few months back, and then he hit 155 after. So Owen tapered off a training cycle. He hit 151 for like an incredibly impressive single, like technically perfect max lift. It was really, really good. And the amount of comments where people are like, hit 155, hit 160, 160 isn't far away, why don't you go for this? So many comments stacked up everywhere, on YouTube videos, on Instagram videos. When you hit a PB, you have to be happy about it. That PB took Owen months and months. It actually might have taken nearly a year, I'm not sure. But these PBs take a long time to achieve, and stop thinking straight away, I want to go and achieve more. Like, we get it. People are competitive. Competitive people play sports. You want to achieve more. You want to be better than what you are now. But you need to be happy when you actually hit that PB. And the great thing about Gerf's story is that he went and hit 155 a few months later after another training cycle, and 155 looked really good. So leaving something there and just being happy that you maxed out, you hit a PB, you don't have to go constantly chasing another PB again. Like, trust the process. You did a training cycle, you tapered off, and you hit a PB. The last thing I'd say then about hitting a PB and what to do afterwards would be make a plan. So we talked about being reflective, we talked about being kind of in the moment and being happy about the PB, but now we need to make a plan pretty quickly, right? Years and years and years ago, when I started going to UL first, and I was kind of doing the CrossFit thing, and I was kind of doing a weightlifting thing, and I wanted to do 100, 120, right? Snatch 100, clean and jerk 120. I started getting coached by Paddy. I think I clean and jerked 120 within like a few weeks. It was like instantly hit it. I snatched 100 after a while. And once I did that, I was just like, fuck. The only thing I've ever wanted to do, or like the major thing I wanted to do before I'd go and do another sport, like I'd different notions, was to hit this number. And now I've hit the number after a training cycle. And what do I do now? I basically stopped training. I stopped lifting weights. I definitely stopped lifting weights in like a programmed way. And it was more than a year later that I started training again, and it was like 2 years before I started training properly again. So when you have hit the PB and you've hit the numbers, you don't need to go straight back to training. You don't need to go and hit a volume or capacity phase immediately, but you need to kind of use that positive momentum and say, okay, I'm going to sit down and make a plan now. I might take a week off. I might take 2 weeks off. I might do an off season where I do 8 weeks of a slightly different style of training, and then I'm going to get back into it. And that making a plan and kind of taking, like, look, that takes half an hour to sit down with your coach, or half an hour to sit down with your buddy you train with, or half an hour of doing a bit of research to actually do a plan, like plan things out pretty properly, maybe look around 12 months ahead. But that will pay huge dividends. You also have the added advantage of having very, very positive, or being in a very, very positive emotional state, because you've just hit a PB or you've just maxed out. And even if you haven't hit a PB but you have maxed out, you could then have a negative emotional state, which will allow you to plan even more analytically, depending on your particular personality or how neurotic you are about training. So thanks very much for watching the video. Those 4 steps of, firstly, being reflective around the session. Secondly, being reflective around the goals you set and possibly your longer term training strategies. Then number 3, enjoying the PB and making the most out of it, and don't fucking tear the ass out of it by constantly going for more and more. And then the last thing, make a plan after you do it. I think if you take these 4 steps as a great thing to do after you max out or after you hit a PB, you're going to be more successful in the future and you'll have better training outcomes. Thanks very much for watching. If you want to watch more videos like this, go and look at our profile. We've more than 100 videos. If you want more long-term discussion with me and Owen and some of the best athletes and coaches in the world, go look at the Sika Strength podcast. If you want more short clips, you can go to our Instagram profile. It's at Sika Strength on Instagram. And thanks very much for watching. Like, comment, subscribe. That would be great.